Alright, hang on. Alright, folks, welcome back. You're watching the ZOTAC Cup. This is the semifinals, but more importantly, this is the last semifinals we're going to have all year. The North American Cup is completely finished. This is the last cup period. It's spawning here in the lower left corner of Frost. This gigantic map and another ZVZ. It's going to be for the Team Acer. Give it up for Scarlett.
And her opponent, currently teamless, trying to make a statement today. The Blue Zerg. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Revival.
Yeah, sadly recently made teamless, no longer with Evil Geniuses, but you know what, that's okay. He's a pretty good player. I'm sure he'll bounce back and find a new team in no time. He's always been one of the better Zergs out there to begin with. Now we may actually, you know, you're asking if he stood a chance in this matchup, but assuming, like, let's assume for a moment Scarlett wins this, there's a pretty good chance we could have an Acer versus Acer finals of Nurchio be on the other side of the brackets currently in the semis. If he wins that out, Nurchio versus Scarlett would actually be really cool to see, in my opinion.
I would love to see that. Whether or not they would take the games 100% seriously, I'm not sure. I don't want to, you know,
Nurchio would, I know that much.
It would be...
That dude is hella competitive.
Like pride, yeah, and competition. Well, maybe we'll see it, Rifkin, but of course, got to get past Revival first, does Scarlett. And both players are going to be opting for Hatch first builds here. So, of course, on Frost, 4-player map, you don't want to necessarily take the risk of going for something uber cheesy and not knowing where your opponent is or going to the wrong location, as I've been finding in some of these maps I'm not as familiar with. I always find myself on Frost going for what is the third base as like the natural sometimes. I don't know why I do that, but like my Marines just end up there.
Well, a big part of it, in other matchups, it's really important because you never want to take that base with that cliff face overhanging it, right? Like, whether it's Roaches, Zergling, or sorry, whether it's Roaches, Marines, or Stalkers, that's not a fun thing to deal with. But in ZVZ, typically it's not so important. That third base ends up being still that extended base here, just so you can get a little bit closer to your opponent. You have a better place to take fights and have that reinforcement point from, you know?
Yeah. It's a geographically tricky map when you look at it from the mini-map and then you look at the actual... where everything is. So it's a pretty cool design. And it's really cool that they're adding more maps this next upcoming ladder seasons and WCS seasons. How they're going to try to make an effort to filter through some of the older maps and make the gameplay a little more dynamic. Less predictable.
I don't like Ultrazeem at all. And like what really bums me out is like that's the path that Blizzard took with their maps instead of consulting like the community map makers. Like some of the more fun maps, like for example, let's say Yansu, right? That was made by, of course, not a Blizzard employee, but a community map maker known as Phoenix X6, aka etc. And it's been very popular this season. I don't think it's anyone's favorite map, but it's one that you see vetoed very not frequently. So I mean, if the community can make those good maps, I just wonder why Blizzard's so stubborn enough not to consult them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a long, slow, ardent process. StarCraft 2 still has many more years ahead of it, and this whole, you know, competitive esports thing is still, let's be honest, in its infancy. You know, it's just started out, really, to just smoothing things over. You know, Blizzard only just this year started that WCS competitive circuit, so there's still a lot of things down the pipe, I think, that we're going to come to see, but we're seeing our first deviation here between the two players' builds. Prior to this Baneling that's going down early for Scarlett, they were pretty much following each other to a T. And as soon as I say that, Revival throws down his own Baneling Nest, so Scarlett is going to scout this out with these couple of lings, so she's in the know. And meanwhile, looking at Revival's vision, hasn't really got an opportunity to get into Scarlett's natural and scout anything out, really.
No, of course, his ling's only just now popping up to kind of chase hers back. Overlord scouting, of course, you never really want to send in because Queens are fast enough to chase it down, but looks like, yeah, you're right, he hasn't seen too much more than what his initial scout saw. Well, dance around a little bit. Of course, Spinecar on the way here. Will lose one of his lings.
It's a lot of lings from Revival working.
It really is, but this is a little more aggressive than we saw in the last series. Scarlett, of course, kind of like haphazardly just said, whatever, I'll defend against this. Now Revival in the main with this mineral line, but the Zerglings have got to run from that Baneling. Oh my god, that was so close. Micro. Okay, Revival making his own Banelings too, hiding off to the side, still dancing around with his lings. Scarlett with her own Speedlings though. Ooh, gonna connect with that one Baneling. Of course, one Baneling left is not enough to deal with the ones that are about to hatch.
This could get ugly for Scarlett in a second here. These two banelings coming through. A lot of the lings are go down, but good
Pretty
defense there on the
hits.
second and third banelings.
Yeah, you know, those weren't even bad hits in the end. Scarlett didn't take too many losses there, thankfully. Only one worker actually died through that mess, but pretty even army equalization. The problem is, though, that Revival dedicated a lot more to that than Scarlett did, so her defense ends up putting her a little bit ahead.
It's crazy. After that, Scarlett has more drones. Her lair is finished, and she's getting her spire quicker. So even though she got all that pressure in her face, she's still, I'm going to say this in terms of DBZ, leaps and bounds ahead of her opponent right now. Has Revival taken his third and fourth gases as well? Yes, okay, he does have those established, and there goes a spire down for him just now. About 20 seconds after Scarlett's, actually. So could see if that plays a factor later on, but
Typically not. I mean, the timing of the spire is a little less relevant to your gas counts, and as we see, their gas counts are pretty even. So just because she'll be able to make 2 Mutalisks earlier doesn't mean that she's gonna have 2 Mutalisks more, right? So
if she starts the upgrades, though, that could play a factor.
Maybe you're right about that. I agree, but what's going to come down is the third base more than anything else, and they are going to take their third. But Revival gets his down slightly sooner, not enough to be super significant. But Scarlett is going to sniff this out, and yeah, Revival's going to be forced to defend here. Yeah, the third base is so like. Here's the thing about Mutas versus Mutas, guys. A lot of people get tied up focusing on the lings on top of the Mutalisks. You know, the fights, it's not really there that matters. As, ooh, a couple banelings coming from behind for Scarlett was going to try and catch Revival off guard. But it's the third base, that gas intake, the extra income, that is more important than most of the actual fights that happen. And looks like, ooh, awkward baneling hits are going to be decent enough. Scarlett, oh, trying so hard not to run into that baneling. Corpses go flying everywhere, though.
Well, 7 Mutalisks on the way before Revival's even made his first. The upgrades are going to time out pretty much at the same exact moment. And you're right, 7 Mutalisks coming from Revival too, so all relatively even here despite all the small little delays between all of them. Third base is finishing up Revival. He's taking his fifth and sixth gases
quite nice too. Now, the upside of Scarlett having these Mutalisks out earlier, Doom, of course, is look at this, picking off the banelings. Now the Zerglings will be chased back. Revival can't really knock down this third the same way he wanted to. If this was still Lings and Banes, he would have taken that base. He had the baneling advantage in a big way. But, yeah, Scarlett defended that quite nicely.
Very timid atmosphere here in Frost.
A very delayed gas getting mined here at the third 2 of Revival. That will not come into effect immediately, but that could be just that little bit extra amount to fall behind. I mean, the gas count's already a little bit heavier on Scarlett's side. She's got more Mutalisks coming out than Revival currently does. And of course,
Here
Revival
comes some Zerglings to mess that up. Gonna be going for the gas drone, so, you know, got the gas down a little bit later, or got the gas actually mining there a little bit later at third base, and now all the drones are gonna fall. Mutas will clean this up eventually, but Mutas for Scarlett have gone into the natural. There's no Spore Callers to defend against this.
No, definitely down to workers now, 40 to 54, and this is that economic disparity. As if taking a Mutalisk fight wasn't difficult enough as is, if you can't actually produce enough Mutalisks to keep up with your opponent, you might as well have lost 5 or 4 in a fight.
And it's a little tough goings here for Revival at 43 drones, the 60 now of Scarlett. Just getting those workers back on gas at the third base as well.
Taking a couple hits from that Spore Caller too, really going to hurt. Revival, who's already struggling to get that Mutalisk number up, taking a fight 12
Transfusions even.
It's 12 to 17 too. He really needs to pull back. It's hard to, of course, to count, like, look at that. You can't just eyeball that and say, yup, that's exactly 18 Mutalisks. So for him, he might not realize just how many she has.
And Scarlett making 28 Zerglings. I think we're going to see that loop-de-loop style that we saw from her before. She comes in with the Lings at one base, attacks with the Mutalisks at the other, and just completely dominates in terms of map control.
If Revival, of course, the scary thing is he'd love to make some banelings, just the easy mode defense against something like you just predicted, but again, that's gas that he can't afford to spend. Every single gas has to go into Mutalisks.
Looking at the overall counts here, currently 17 to 16, pretty even, but on the way, 7 more for Scarlett, only 3 for Revival.
Yeah, up to 21. Scarlett actually going to pull ahead in a really big way. Not just a little bit, but in a huge way. She's going to have like 27, 28 Mutalisks. Revival's going to have 19. That's not going to work at all.
There is a well-placed Spore Crawler here for Revival at the natural, which should deflect against any Mutas that try to approach from that back angle. But if Scarlett just clumps all of her army together and just clashes up against Revival, I don't see her losing that battle. But I think she's going to do it a little more elegantly than I would, per se.
The drone count here, though, Doom, this is what's getting really out of hand. It's 64 to 46. And again, it doesn't matter if you can't take a fight, if you can't produce behind it. Meanwhile, Runsling's into the Nashville, Runsling's into the main. Scarlett is on a rampage.
And the Mules are going to clash the third base, but it doesn't matter right now because the economic damage is being done here from Scarlett. She's got way more lings than Revival currently has to defend against this, and the drones are going to be completely unoffended.
Good game is called. All right, best of 3 starts off Scarlett 1-0.